Game design is a very iterative process, meaning you have something in your game, some kind of gameplay mechanic or feature, and you work on it again and again and again and again and again until you get it just right, until you get it the way you want it to be, right? And so there can be as many iterations as you want. There can be one iteration if you think you got it right from the first try. There can be 10, 20, 30, any amount, really. Realistically, you would limit yourself on how much time you spend on a single feature, but if the game demands it, you could work on something for a very, very long time. And so in that regard, mods are actually very, very helpful when you want to make a game and you are struggling with figuring out what you want from the game, what kind of features you like in a game, and so on and so forth. Because a game is a combination of many, many different gameplay mechanics that all work with each other in some way. For example, you can have skills and experience, right? You gain experience to gain skills, then you get perk points, which you invest into perks, right? It's a combination of 3 different systems, and they all mesh together. You can have weapons that can have then weapon ammo types and, for example, weapon attachments. And they all mesh together by influencing how the weapon functions, depending on which ammo type is selected and which weapon mods are selected, and so on and so forth. And in that regard, games are very complex, and there are very, very many moving parts in a single game. And it's very important to know exactly what you want from the game, because if you make a game and you don't know what the hell you want from it, in a lot of cases you end up with a tech demo that's not fun to play. And in my opinion, that's where mods are very useful. So I started out with mods. I didn't even think that I would eventually start, making games and would turn it into something that I do for a living. But that's how things turned out. But my experience with mods is that if you pick a game that you mod, right, one that has lots and lots of access to all of its various systems, you can very quickly pump out these little mods, and each little mod can be as many as, for example, 1 gameplay mechanic or 2 gameplay mechanics, right? It depends. But the gist of it is that a single mod is like a gameplay mechanic that you decide to really hone in, see what you like, see what you don't like, and check how it meshes together with other gameplay mechanics. So for example, with Intravenous 1 and 2, I already knew what kind of gameplay mechanics I wanted in the game. When it comes to the gunplay, I had tons of practice in that regard in Garry's Mod when I used to make weapon mods. When it comes to the stealth, I had a little bit of testing of that in Garry's Mod, but since Half-Life 2 isn't exactly a stealth game primarily, first of all, there were very few levels intended for stealth gameplay, and second, the default NPCs, they didn't really take into consideration things like darkness and sound and stuff, at least not as much as you would want from a stealth game. Then, for example, the health system, where when you get shot, you regenerate health, but not all of it. I also tried that in Garry's Mod as a mod. The armor system, where when you get hit by a bullet, depending on which armor vest it is and depending which caliber hits you, basically determines how much health you're going to regenerate and how much damage it's going to soak up. I already tried that in Garry's Mod as well. The stamina system, which is not present in Intravenous, I also tried that and came to the conclusion that stamina would not be a good inclusion in Intravenous. So in a game like Garry's Mod, where you have lots and lots of different systems to play around with and lots of library extensions, blah, 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 where you can basically control the game as much as possible, it's very easy to make these little mods, which are just collections of a couple of gameplay mechanics, and like I already said, to figure out what you want from a game. It's also a very good way of actually practicing the things that you will eventually add to your game, because you're hyper focusing on that 1 or 2 gameplay mechanics. So in my experience, modding is an excellent tool to quickly pump out these little isolated gameplay mechanics to then determine what you want in a game. But it all depends on what kind of game you mod, right? You could mod a game that has very little modding support, does not give you a whole lot of access over all the systems, and that's inherently obvious that if you mod a game that does not give you much freedom in its modding capabilities, then you're not going to be able to do shit. It's going to be hacky, it's going to be weird, it's going to feel like a workaround and just feel like amateur hour. You don't want that. In my opinion, modding games is perfectly fine for figuring out what the hell you want from a game. even if people might look down on that. For example, one of the people I worked with, he basically looked down on the fact that I used to make mods. He thought that wasn't real, game development experience. And in some way he is correct, because, a game is a huge collection of gameplay mechanics, whereas a mod is just a tiny collection of gameplay mechanics, right? But that person didn't know what kind of mods I made, so he thought that like whatever I made was minimal in terms of the amount of work that I did back then. But anyway, kind of off topic. There's also the other aspect which ties into what I just said. People are just not going to take you very seriously. For example, if you make a bunch of mods for a game, right? Let's say you make a bunch of mods for Garry's Mod, and then you reach out a publisher with your game idea, and you have like a small prototype of your game, but primarily your portfolio are all the Garry's Mod mods that you made, right? They're not going to take you seriously, because they also understand that a game is a big collection of all the gameplay mechanics, and they need to be sure that you know how to tie all these features together in a cohesive manner. And mods which are like separate gameplay mechanics, they don't show that. You need to basically, if you want to convince a publisher that you're worth working with, mods are not a good look in terms of a portfolio. It's good to have, but it's not what's going to sell anyone on deciding whether or not to work with you. So if you're looking for a publisher, you either need to have a game or two under your belt, or you need to work with like Unreal Engine or Unity or whatever, where you can actually, make all these features. Because it is more impressive when you have like a bare bones engine, right, which has all the basic systems for what you want to do, but nothing else. Garry's Mod, it has tons of things in it already. It has NPCs, it has a weapon system, it has all these things, right? If you do it on a clean slate and like some kind of engine like Unreal Engine or Unity, where these systems are minimally developed and you pretty much have to do everything by yourself, that is much more impressive than modding a game and making use of all the work that the game developers already put into the game that you decided to mod. And I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. That's also, modders are very arrogant about that too. They think that because they mod a game, that makes them like experts at game development. It doesn't. The true test for how good you are at game design and game development is actually making a game. Mods are not a good showcase of that, but they are a really good tool for quickly testing out many different gameplay mechanics. And I'm starting to repeat myself, so I'll just end the video here because I've already said everything that I wanted to say on this topic. Thanks for watching. See you next time.